If you had fun with yesterday's episode talking about how many Illini might make an NBA roster, well, early Monday, a major publication released an article about how many potential Illini can make the 2028 Olympics.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Illini. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Simple reminder, we are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Sunny Verma. You can find me at IlliniCast, or you can find me at the Sunny V. I got a lot of feedback on yesterday's episode where we discussed how many potential NBA players were on the Illini team next season, and today's going to be even more fun, but this one is not my fault. This was another publication. Also, it's Tuesday. Tuesdays in this part of town mean it's Big Ten Ted Tuesday, so I'm really excited to bring Ted back on, and we'll see what topic Ted has for us today. If you'd like to do me a quick favor, again, just hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Find me on your favorite audio platform, whether it's Apple, whether it's Spotify, whatever it may be, and hit that download button. It really helps our channel grow. I think we're at 1,020 subs as of this recording. Amazing, considering we just started 3 months ago, and we basically only dealt with off-season topics. And now that the football season is right around the corner, I can't wait to really get in the swing of things with you guys. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Before we start today's episode, I want to give a little quick shout out to Airsoft Empire 8951 from my comments from yesterday's video, where he mentioned these video titles are going to be so cringy if it doesn't work in 2024, 2025. And let me tell you, I've thought about that before. Obviously, my job here creating this content is I need to make you guys click on it. But I really realized that over the last couple of weeks, some of the titles that I've been coming up with, let's just say if things don't work out next season, a lot of these are going to be screenshotted and thrown to my face. And there's a lot of you that are going to be laughing at me. Hopefully that won't be the case, though. Ironically enough, I think I'm more pessimistic when it comes to the basketball team than most of the Illini fan base. I still think that we're going to be a very, very good team, but I joke around constantly how our fan base is one of the more irrational ones when it comes to the basketball side. So I just don't set my personal expectations at something like Elite Eight or you're repeating the performance of last year's. But, you know, at the same line of thinking, I said 2 years from now that I think that we can win a national championship. So who knows? I like this team. Are my titles a little over the top? Sure. But today's episode that you're watching is not me. This is something from The Ringer. So The Ringer had an article titled "A Way Too Early Basketball Primer for the 2028 Olympics," written by Danny Chau, one of the better basketball writers out there. Now, obviously, one of the main focuses of this article was Cooper Flagg and Victor Wembanyama. You're talking about two guys who could very well be the two best players in the world in 4 years, not just the NBA. In fact, we all know that the U.S. team is constantly stacked. Every year, we're the overwhelming favorite to win the gold when it comes to basketball. But if you take a look at that France roster, in 4 years, with Victor being 4 years older, I really think that France is going to throw some dudes at the Team USA team. You're talking about a whole bunch of players who are 6'8", 6'9", 7'1", 7'3", that they're going to be able to put on the court pretty much at the same time. And so those two teams, France and U.S., are kind of the main focus of that article, as they should be. I think those two are going to be clearly the two strongest teams in the Olympics in 2028. But what the article also did was give a rundown of other countries and other players that might be representing said teams in a couple years. So where did the Illini come in? Well, we don't have any Illini players on the Team USA teams, but that does not mean that we don't have any players that could potentially be on some of the international rosters, which actually makes sense with all the international recruiting Brad Underwood has been doing this offseason. He's gone after some of the best prospects in the entire world. So, of course, if they're the best prospects in the world, then their countries would be wanting them to rep them in tournaments like the Olympics. First and foremost, Will Riley, Canada. I don't want to read the article word for word because I want you to be able to read it, but I'll just kind of clip out the excerpts talking about the Illini players in general. And the article, for the most part, is talking about reviewing the Canadian roster, both the current players, but then it also goes on to talk about future potential players. And in regards to Will Riley and in regards to Canada, the article says the country's next best NBA prospect is Will Riley, who will spend his freshman year playing at Illinois as a willowy 6'8" wing with an unorthodox Kevin Martin-esque nature to his game, but with an unfathomably deep range from three. Will Riley scores. Will Riley scores a lot. The fact that he's getting international mention, and I guess it's expected since he's played for the country before at younger ages, but Canada is becoming a basketball power. They have been for almost the last 15 years or so. When Andrew Wiggins became the number one pick in that NBA draft, and then I believe shortly right after they had that big bust of a number one pick. What was it, Anthony Bennett that was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers, who I don't think even made a single season. He was a bust, sure, but Canada, those folks up north, they love their basketball, and that talent pool is getting a lot better. And to have Will Riley being mentioned as one of the next few guys who's going to be leading that team up north, that's really exciting for me as an Illini fan to see. And then secondly, of course, the man of the show, Kasparas Jakucionis, who plays for Lithuania. Lithuania is the FIBA's 10th ranked basketball team in the world. And in regards to Kasparas, this is what they say. Lithuania's most intriguing prospect is 18-year-old Kasparas Jakucionis, a wildly creative 6'5" guard who will play alongside Riley, the Canadian prospect, at Illinois this season. Jakucionis' body control is impressive. For his age, he's already comfortable with the change of pace dribbles and feints and that allow him to get into pull-ups and toss imaginative passes with both precision and flair. Lithuania's best shot and making its way back to the Olympic stage in 2028 may be leaning into youth and finding out what it could have in a dribble handoff game between Sabonis and its crafty star in the making. I mean, those are some very promising words. And again, this guy comes without an Illini bias. This is just Danny's just a guy who knows his ball, who knows these international prospects. And to see that Kasparas' skill set is being recognized by people not just wearing blue and orange glasses has got to make us feel good and makes me chuckle. 2 months ago, I didn't know who Kasparas was. 2 months ago, me and a lot of you guys were panicking, saying that Brad Underwood had lost his touch, that we didn't have that superstar to eventually take on the reins from Terrence Shannon Jr. and Marcus Damask. And guess what? 2 months later, one of the guys that Brad Underwood ended up locking down for the roster next year, he's being talked about as possibly being on his country's Olympic basketball team next time around. Articles like this, we need to share and we need to want to have as much traction as possible when it comes to the internet and social media and whatnot. This is what will bring up the profile of the University of Illinois and the Fighting Illini and Brad Underwood and the program that he's building. We want to be known as a school that develops basketball players, especially for the foreign prospects. We have a lot of ground to make up when it comes to domestically, just because obviously kids grow up here learning more about the Dukes and the North Carolinas, but kids growing up in Lithuania, kids growing up in Spain, kids up north in Canada, we still have as good a shot as anybody with those type of kids. And I'll just end this segment saying the same thing I always do. It's a great time to be an Illini fan. Sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids. What did these have in common? You're probably buying a ton again this summer, but don't stress about the cost. Use Ibotta and get cash back on all your purchases when you stock up on all your summer essentials. You can save on over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores, Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONMLB. All right, it's Tuesday. That means we are 9 days away from kickoff for the Illini football season. And for those of you Illini fans who are majority basketball fans, which, that's most of you, obviously, the Big Ten has shifted greatly. And if you don't really follow the college football scene quite as much, well, you're talking about a whole complete bracket when it comes to playoff, when it comes to the teams that might be making the playoffs. And so, again, it's Tuesday. Who else to bring in and inundate us with this new knowledge than my good friend, Ted? Big Ten. Ted, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing great. 9 days away, as you said, till we kick things off on that Thursday night. You mentioned Illinois in action. Of course, a big matchup in Minneapolis between the North Carolina Tar Heels and the Minnesota Golden Gophers, primetime on Fox. So it's going to be – I'm so excited for this season to begin. Man, it seems like it's gone on for a while because we've all been looking forward to this season pretty much ever since 2 summers ago when that USC-UCLA announcement was made.
Sure.
And then last year was kind of that year that's kind of stranded in between, here. But we finally made it here. And just a couple more shows here until we get to talk, until we get to react here on Locked On Illini. Some Big Ten football, and I can't wait for that either.
Absolutely. Ted's going to be joining me every week during the season as well. He's been so incredibly gracious with this time in the off season. He's going to help us out during the season as well, kind of giving us an idea of what big games, non-Illini related, are coming up the following weekend. So we're looking forward to Ted and I continuing this relationship going into the season. But Ted, speaking of going into the season, as you mentioned, we know Oregon, UCLA, USC, Washington, they're in the conference now. But now, after week 1, we're actually going to be seeing that standings page look a lot different than it has the last couple of years. And that's just at the beginning of the season. Obviously, a lot of rules have changed to kind of factor in all the conferences that are now gone. Rest in peace, Pac-12, and the ones that have kind of expanded. Can you give us kind of a rundown of how things have changed on the college football landscape, at least postseason-wise?
Oh, my gosh. I thought these were supposed to be 30-minute shows. A lot has changed, even from last year to this year. Of course, I'm focused here on the Big Ten Conference, and just you're going from a 10-year structure that you've had in the East-West split, and now you have no divisions. So you're going to take the top 2 teams with the top 2 conference records. That's important to note. The conference record, your 9-game conference schedule, are going to play in Indianapolis. We still haven't heard anything from the conference as far as tiebreakers go. Like, a lot of people have thrown out a lot of possibilities. What happens if we get a 3-way tie? What happens if we get a 4-way tie? We just don't know yet. Hopefully we'll know by the time, Illinois kicks off on that Thursday night. But that's one big change that we've seen. Of course, a lot of people have been diving into CFB 25. That's been an exciting change that's coming back as well this season. And, of course, maybe the biggest change, the 12-team college football playoff, the 4-team invitational gone. You have 5 automatic bids to the top 5 conference champions. Of course, those 7 at-large bids as well. So top 4 conference champions get a bye right into that round of 8. And, man, first-round playoff games on campus. I wish it were the first 2 rounds personally, but I'll settle for one. That weekend is going to, like, everybody's circling October 12th as a fantastic college football weekend. And it will be those first round playoff games in the middle of December. I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Like, can you imagine? I've seen so many mock brackets of Penn State hosting Notre Dame or something in the first round, or something like Ohio State hosting Ole Miss or something. Like, we want them to come up here where the weather's a little bit colder. So I can't wait for that first weekend of college football, in the college football playoff, I should say, there in the middle of December.
I have to admit, I'm one of those guys who's been kind of hesitant on this whole change and kind of complaining more than anything else. But you're exactly right. Once that first round of the playoffs hits, and, let's just assume Illinois season is over and I just get to sit back, watch, and just be a fan and get to watch, as you said, someone like, Notre Dame, Penn State, or whatever in a first round matchup, I'm going to be like, okay, this was worth it. This is more good college football, and there's no such thing as too much good college football.
Absolutely. And the thing, I get it. I'm a little bit maybe traditional or old school with you as well. Bowls and polls era was great because of how much the regular season meant and how important those regular season games were. And they still are very important. And I think there's going to be more important games towards the end of the season. Before, it was really that top 5 to 6 teams that really the national media and a lot of people were focused on, because those were the playoff teams. You expand the playoff, and now those 2-loss teams, maybe those 3-loss teams. I don't think as many 3-loss teams are going to get in as people think right now, but you're going to have a lot more competitive games at the end of the season. I'd have to go look at the schedule, but there's a possibility that week 12, week 13, even week 14, we know Michigan and Ohio State, right, is going to be, it always is, a big-time matchup, but that's a possibility where even if Michigan has 2 losses and Ohio State is undefeated, for example, in the past, that's, Michigan's just coming up, they got to play spoiler, right, for Ohio State to make it maybe to Indianapolis or the 14 playoff or whatever. Now, that's kind of an elimination game for Michigan on the other side, so I think there's more at stake. I think more viewers are going to be engaged as well. And like the traditionalists, maybe a little bit myself, maybe more like, folks like you, I think they're going to see that first weekend, like we said, of college football playoff, those 4 games on campus, and they're going to be like, okay, this is pretty neat. I love this. And the only weird thing about the playoff to me is, like, the Rose Bowl, of course, wants to be locked into that New Year's Day, 5:30 Eastern time slot. What's weird to me is that, and they want to stay in that time slot, by the way, beyond these next couple of seasons. So that's a quarterfinal. So you're going to win the Rose Bowl to get to, like, the Peach Bowl. That's, the further you go in a tournament, it seems like it should get more prestigious, from a bowl game to a bowl game to a bowl. So winning a bowl to go to another bowl, it seems a little bit weird to me. I wish the first 2 rounds were on campus, so all of those teams could, I think a big part of this, right, because money drives everything in this sport, I think a lot of those teams, number 1 seeds, Ohio State or Alabama or Georgia, they're going to be like, we kind of wish that we had a home game for a home game, another home game, ticket revenue, helping out the town that you're in. Those are big time events for the city that they're in. So I kind of wish everybody, what would it be, the top 8 teams or whatever it is, would have an opportunity for a home game. But that's really my only gripe with this thing. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It also goes really late. I mean, January 20th. I wish we could maybe move up the season starting week 0 with everybody, and then you can move just things up a week maybe. So those are just little itty bitty gripes. But like we said before, once we see it on the field, I think it's going to be fantastic.
All right. So, Ted, let's just kind of talk about the upcoming college football playoff, at least in the Big Ten lens. Ohio State, Oregon, I'm assuming, locks. Who else do you think might be able to take some of those 12 slots up?
Well, I think that's where it gets interesting, because a lot would have to go wrong for Ohio State or Oregon with those rosters not to make the college football playoff. So I feel pretty confident about 3. Whether that's Penn State or whether that's Michigan. Now, Michigan's early non-conference matchup, week number 2 against Texas, is going to tell us a lot about their college football playoff chances, because they have Ohio State and Oregon in conference the rest of the way. You look outside of Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State, some of the best opponents were at least talking about in August right now, what look to be the best opponents. You got USC at home, maybe Washington, otherwise you got a lot of the Minnesotas on the schedule. You got Indiana's on the schedule. You got a lot of teams that might be floating right around that 500 mid-tier range in the Big Ten Conference. So you don't have a lot of opportunities for big, significant wins. I really hope the committee makes their decisions on who teams beat rather than good losses. Good losses, they'll put those two words together. It's one of my most hated phrases in football. It really is. You should be judged on your victories rather than your losses. But I understand people that at least kind of think that way a little bit. But if Michigan can get that win over Texas, that's going to give them a big boost, because a 9-3 Michigan team with big wins like against the USC maybe as your premier win, I think that's tough. That's tough. I don't think they get in at that point. But considering that Texas has lost their top two running backs to season-ending injuries, I'm starting to lean in the direction that Michigan can play their style of game early in the season against the Texas Longhorns. You look at the Penn State Nittany Lions, okay? They have a schedule that some people have said, hey, this team can go 11-1. They can, right? You get Ohio State at home. You got road games against USC. You got road games against Wisconsin. And then who else knows what happens with some upset-minded teams down the stretch as well. Purdue and Minnesota are on the road. Last time Penn State went to Minneapolis, they fell short in 2019 when they were ranked number 4 in the country. But I feel good about the Penn State Nittany Lions. Like, if they lose to USC or Wisconsin, they better hope that the other one in that group is a ranked team, because, kind of like Michigan, there might not be a ton of opportunities for big top 20, top 15 wins outside of that. So I think it's very important for these teams that outside of those big games, they got to look impressive, right? They got to look impressive. They got to win by a couple of scores. I think that's a big part of that when maybe your schedule isn't as strong. The same can be said in the SEC for teams like Ole Miss and Missouri, right? Teams that don't have some of those big-time SEC teams on their schedule, they got to look impressive against some of those mid-tier teams over there in the SEC. Like I said, I feel good about 3, can certainly see 4. Beyond that, it's a stretch, mostly because of what you see. Look, Iowa is a team that a lot of people have said, and maybe I'll believe it when I see it when it comes to their offense, right? Because we saw what Cade McNamara looked like in that Kids Day scrimmage. It did not look promising. This is a guy that hasn't really played a lot of football for 2 years. He's coming off 2 significant injuries. Sure, they've raised the floor with Brendan Sullivan in the quarterback room, but I don't know, man. I think they got to go 11-1 to get to the playoff. I really do. I really do. Of course, they have that game against Ohio State, but they got to look impressive the rest of the way, I think, for Iowa to really, because in a sense, what do you need to be? You need to be a top 10 team, right? You have a 12-team playoff, the G5 representative, and then who knows, maybe the Big 12 is a bid stealer if they all cannibalize themselves and their conference champion is ranked 13th or whatever it is. So you got to be in the top 10 to feel really strong. And, there's going to be a lot of SEC teams up in there. I think the Big 12 is going to be a little bit better than advertised, even though I think that there's going to be a lot of teams beating the other. A beats B, but C beats A, and B beats C. It's going to be a lot of that as well. So once again, feel good about 3, could see 4. Beyond that, I mentioned USC, man, everything's got to click. Everything's got to click. They got a really good receiving core, but it's really young. I really like USC as a team for 2025, personally. If Miller Moss and all of these guys come back on offense and they get another year within the scheme on defense. So, but yeah, could it happen for USC? Maybe. They got a tough schedule, which means what? Which means that they can go out and win some big-time games. That's the thing. Everybody kind of talks about these super conferences and these tough schedules, but maybe, just maybe, that's going to allow you to go 9-3 and possibly get in. Maybe there's a little bit more leeway where, like, for example, you put this year's schedule out there for the USC Trojans. Okay, if they lose to, say, Notre Dame, they lose to Michigan, and they lose to Penn State, for example. You can still beat LSU, which is a top 15 team. They could be 9-3 or 10-2, stay within the top 15. That's a good win out there. Maybe Wisconsin is a team that they play this year that goes 8-4 or 9-3 or something like that. So, I think it's going to, these schedules, it depends on the draw. And I think that I really hope the committee values big, significant wins, because you're going to value 9-3 teams against in the Power 2, Big Ten, SEC, against 11-1 Big 12 teams. I think that's where it gets a little bit murky. It gets a little bit muddy, because I think the Power 2, of course, plays a better schedule than maybe some of those over there in the Big 12 or the ACC. So good luck, committee. I'll just say that.
Ted and we're going to be making our official predictions, at least for the Illini next week. But Ted, I want to give you the floor. You're going to be making your actual predictions a little sooner than that.
Yeah. Here tonight, Tuesday night, the first edition of Big Nation. I've really been focusing here for the last 3 or 4 years on more short form content, but I'm kind of expanding my coverage into 2-hour-long shows here during the season. Still going to have that coverage on Saturdays. But that starts tonight. First episode of Big Nation, doing season game by game predictions with scores. Also, power rankings on the defensive side of the football, and then which Big Ten teams are on upset alert or could put others on upset alert. So I'm very excited about this venture, very excited to talk about it, and got a special announcement on there. Very excited about something that's coming up here pretty soon to kick off the season. So it's going to be a ton of fun. Looking forward to this every Tuesday night, every Thursday night, and maybe looking forward to previewing the Tuesday shows here every week on Locked On Illini. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Action-packed Big Ten Tuesdays, as always. Ted, you're the best in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So the Illinois season starts in about 9 days, but actual football season starts this upcoming Saturday, and I'm already trying to figure out what my wagers and bets are going to be. And when I decide to make those bets, it's obviously going to be using FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. And that'll just about wrap it up for another successful episode of Locked On Illini. Again, I apologize. I know the audio might still seem a little off. I'm still a little congested from the illness I had at the end of last week, but I appreciate your guys' patience on your way out. If you don't mind, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Football season's so close, and I really am so proud of hitting 1,000 subs that by the end of basketball season, I want to be able to double it. Let's hit 2,000 subs. Big Ten Ted, he's got a fantastic show that's going to be airing this evening. If I get the link in time, I'm going to go ahead and add it to the description. Please follow him, hit the notification button. I mean it when I say that. When you talk about Big Ten content, no one does it better than Ted. That'll just about wrap it up for today. I love you guys.